Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vitamin C's with me, your boy, Adam Taylor. And as usual, I'm joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Shields. What's poppin', Tim?
Nothing much. Just trying to beat the heat again. It's still pretty hot around here. Been sweating my ass off.
For real, yo,
Still.
chill here now. Look, we had that heat wave last week. My PC died. I had to get that new one. I'm chilling. I'm in like a long sleeve. Like I'm chilling right now, man.
Don't brag to me.
I mean, it's thin. It's like a long sleeve, like t-shirt thing. I don't know. It's comfortable as hell. Before we get into it, please make sure that you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and leave a comment. I know I've been a bit crap with getting back to people's comments. I've been a little bit slow. I will get better at that as time goes on. You know, I have a load of comments on socials that I kind of tell myself I'm going to get back to, and then before I get back to them, I've released something new, and then it's like, oh damn, I didn't get back to the last set of comments. So I know that I need to be better there, and I will be. But you know, you're just gonna have to stick with us. This is a learning process. Today, what we're going to talk about is we're talking about Mr. Jayson Tatum. So Jayson Tatum was caught at the premiere of Point Guards, if I'm not mistaken, and he was asked about his thoughts on the entire Jaylen Brown scenario. So before we dive into it, I want to play that clip. It's about a minute long. At least then, if you haven't seen it, you know what we're talking about. And if you saw it last night, then we can refresh your memory before we start trying to dissect what happened. So we're playing it now.
The Celtics talking to the Nets about maybe getting Durant.
I don't make anything of it. I just play basketball.
Do you have a dream team?
To play on, if St. Louis had a team, that'd be the team I'd play for.
Just what would you think of playing with Kevin?
I mean, I played with him during the Olympics, obviously. You know, was a great player. But that's not my decision. You know, I love our team. I love the guys that we got. I don't know if that report is true or not.
Paul Pierce said you guys don't have to do anything.
If we don't have to do anything, no, we got two new pieces. I love our team, right? Like I said, I just go out there and play with my teammates. So that's not really. I don't put that hat on to make decisions.
Did you have any reaction to the reports that Jaylen Brown was interviewed?
I don't believe everything I see on TV. I done seen some shit about me that was a lie, so you never really know what is true and what's not true.
Is it ever a scary thought if you didn't make it to the NBA, what you'd be doing?
I don't believe everything I see on TV. I don't know what's true and what's not true. Yeah, that's from more than just basketball. There's a bunch to dissect here. So, Tim, you're the one who hasn't spoken since the start of this show because I just kept talking. So I'm going to let you give your thoughts first, brother.
I guess my first thought is I wish people would stop asking him what team he want to play on, because he's always going to say that he'd love to play on a team in St. Louis that doesn't exist. I think the real meat of the conversation obviously is talking about Durant, talking about the news. He doesn't. I think he's got a hand in these decisions. Like, I think you have to say that the face of the franchise is going to be brought in those kind of conversations, because you're not talking about, hey, do you want us to sign this guy? Do you want us to go out and try and make a small deal for this guy? You're talking about a massive roster shakeup in order to bring in a guy like Kevin Durant. So I really just don't know what he was expected to say there. He's not going to say outright that he has final say on things, but he didn't quite dismiss it as much as he's don't believe everything you read. Don't believe everything you hear.
Yeah, so for me, it was more along the lines of I personally don't believe he's at the point where he's not considered, consulted would be the word I'd use. I don't think he's consulted as much as what people probably think he is. I definitely think there's hey, if we trade for Durant, how are you going to feel about it? Can you play with him? Do you get along with him? What's your relationship with him like in your day-to-day? And if Tatum was like, I can't stand that dude, then it's probably dead in the water from the get-go, right? But as Tatum said on that interview, he played with Durant during the Olympics. We've heard when he was on the Draymond Green show that Durant was very vocal in trying to get Tatum to be more of that guy, And we spoke about this on the last episode. More of that guy. He wanted him to take them shots, to do what he did best. And I think that made Tatum feel good. So in that situation, I think Tatum's like, it's Durant, dude. He's a great player. I get on with him on a personal level. I don't think he's consulted on, well, who should we give up for him or anything like that. Maybe it's a passing comment like, well, it's going to cost us JB, right? And then Tatum has to give a response. But I don't think that response kills or adds fuel to the fire in those trade negotiations either way. I think it's very much a courtesy type of conversation, just like, hey, you're the guy, but you're still not that guy, where if you do a LeBron and be like, I want Westbrook, we're going to go out and get you Westbrook. This is more of a, hey, this might happen. Like, are you okay with it? And the only time it's going to die is if he's like, dude, I can't stand that dude. If you sign him, I'm going to request a trade. I think that's the only type of courtesy that they're showing him right now, simply because he's still a young guy and he might be the star of the team, but he's not a superstar yet.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the question is what exactly did the media expect him to say when they asked those questions? Like, I just don't understand what the goal was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to try and see, like, you can read into body language as much as you can read into the words that are coming out of somebody's mouth, right? And even though you don't expect him to say anything, you're not really going to get what you're looking for. Your job as the reporter is to ask the question and to try and frame it in multiple ways, to try and piece together enough information to come to an educated assumption on where that could be. Now, the difference is you do need to make sure that people are aware that what you're saying is an assumption based off what he said. If you go out there like Jayson Tatum said he's completely fine with Kevin, well, you're lying, you're misinforming people, and there's no credibility to that. But if you can make clear that this is your assumption based off the body language that he showed, I found that when he was asked about Durant, he smiled. His eye contact with the camera kind of moved away a little bit, as if to be like, yeah, it's fucking Kevin Durant. Of course, I'd be happy to play with him. You know what I mean? What a stupid question. Do I think? But again, I'd never be like, Tatum alluded to Jaylen Brown, like to being happy with Jaylen Brown being traded, because that's just not true. And this is where I think there's a disconnect between players and media at the moment, because it's so much based on what you infer without making it clear that it's what you inferred, right? So they had to ask the question, and I think they got reasonable responses, but you were never going to get yeah, dude, I'm stoked, Durant's coming next week. You were never going to get that type of response, simply because that's above his pay grade. He said it himself. I don't put the hat on to go and make decisions. In other words, my name's not LeBron James.
Yeah, yikes. When you put it like that. And I mean, I think he doesn't want that perception either. I don't think anyone wants to seem like they're the one ultimately calling the shots with the roster, because when it comes down to it, if a team's all of a sudden pouring all these assets in to get players and you don't win a championship, and all of a sudden it's like, why did you let this guy influence your decisions? Like, why did you? Because LeBron gets a ton of flack with that too. And sometimes to a degree, like, it's very justified. They're like, we traded all of our first round picks for all of these veterans and we didn't get a championship. Like, what the hell? And then he'll dip. But it's very different for Jayson Tatum. Like, this is clearly he is the face of the franchise, right? Like, this is his team. Tatum has the keys. And it is not to say that Jaylen Brown is not as important or on that same level or anything like that. And I think that's where things get sticky. Maybe there's some issues there eventually that will come to light. I don't think there is, but there's been this whole rhetoric around Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown coexisting on a team. So I think that, like, any time that there is any kind of superstar that has any sort of connection with Jayson Tatum on a personal level, or they play together, either at Team USA or something like that, like, the media is going to go full on teeth bared into the conversation, trying to get whatever information they can, because they're like, well, there's just an opportunity for the Celtics to go and get a guy that Tatum likes to play with. So maybe it costs Jaylen Brown. Like, do you still do it? And it's like, well, of course he still wants to play with these guys, but he still likes Jaylen too. It's not like one or the other gun to his head, he's going to have to choose which one he's going to play with. Like, he's fine with other situations. And he made a point of saying that too. Said, I love this team.
Said that twice.
I love this team.
So got new pieces.
Multiple
love
times.
This team, love the guys on the team, love playing with my teammates. I think that another part...
So he's fine either way.
Another part of this that you've kind of alluded to, and I'm just going to say it more bluntly, was a lot of this narrative is simply because people believe that Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum don't get along. They've had to, like, I've never known two stars have to address their personal relationship so frequently. They had to do, they did a sit down last season to kind of be like, yo, we're boys, man. You might not see us out all the time, but Tatum's like, yo, I got Deuce. JB's running a business. Both of them have got like obligatory deals with, you know, like whoever their brand representing, you know, representing brands for, Ruffles or whoever. Then they've got their training to do, and then they got to have a life, man. If you wishing it, like, I've got friends that I see rarely. You know, one of my best friends lives on the other side of the planet. So you're not going to see us out together every weekend because I'm not traveling 7,000 miles each week. Doesn't mean we're not boys. We don't know what their text messaging habits are like between each other. You know, we don't know how often they're on calls to each other. But I think that does play a part in all of this. Hey, how do you feel about playing with Durant? Because, you know, you're probably not very happy playing with Jaylen. Like, they're not saying it, but they're inferring it, because that's the narrative that's been built up between, like, 2019 to now, is these guys play together, they struggle to mesh on the floor, and they're not meshing off the floor, when in all reality, we don't know. Nobody knows that.
Yeah, well, and I also think, like, they're inferring, like, well, like, you know, you like playing with Jaylen, but you probably like playing with, like, Durant more, right? Like, I feel like that's a thing that constantly happens, where it's like, here's a situation where you get to play with this superstar. Do you want it? Do you want this more? Like, how badly do you want this? Do you want this more than what you have with Jaylen right now? And it doesn't need to be like a this or that conversation, but it gets framed like that, which kind of sucks, because I don't think asking these guys these same exact questions with different framing changes the response. They're going to give the same response when it comes down to it. I mean, Jaylen was talking about it before in that interview that you talked about. Like, I've babysat for Deuce. Like, they're that close. He is Uncle JB. Like, that's what his role is. Like, they're part of each other's lives. And I feel like this is what would have happened with, like, Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter if, like, Twitter and social media and all that stuff existed when they were, like, in their primes, like when they were on the same team together. Just because everything that's coming out about the Celtics and about JB and JT is there's this whole, like, alpha and, like, beta complex, like, who's number one? And we had people, like, flipping, you know, this way or that way. Oh, Tatum had a bad game, but Jaylen Brown was excellent. Or Jaylen Brown had an okay game with a lot of turnovers, but, like, Jayson Tatum had, like, 30-something points on, you know, crazy shooting from the field or something like that. There's this constant need to compare. Like, we can't just accept greatness for what it is. And then it's always like, well, if one person's succeeding, the other one's not, or, you know, I guess it means that they can't play together, which I just think is crazy. Like, it's rare what the Celtics have, and I really hate that there's this media narrative that needs to be pushed about splitting them up. And as it goes to Durant and everything, I think Tatum said everything that he needed to say. He handled it perfectly. He didn't say too much. He didn't say too little. Obviously, he seems happy about trying to play with Kevin Durant. Again, that's me inferring based on his expression and on his body language. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't want to play with JB, or that he would be stoked to get rid of JB to get Kevin Durant. I just don't think that's true.
It's like being a rapper, right? And then, like, I don't know, you've just done an album with 50 Cent, and then somebody's like, hey, did you enjoy that album? Doing that album? You're like, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Well, do you want to go and do one with Eminem? But if you do it, you can't do another one with 50. Or do you want to go do one with the Baby? If you want to, I mean, I'm old school, so like 50 and Eminem were the biggest rappers when I was coming up. But maybe Jay-Z as well, if we're being fair. DMX too, shout out R.I.P. DMX. But you get my point, right? Like, it's kind of just like, hey, well, you've had your chance with this dude, you've done it. Like, it's time to see what we can do elsewhere. And it's that mentality of always looking for the next best thing. And like, I've said this on the last episode, and I'm going to say it on tomorrow's episode because I already know what I want to talk about with you tomorrow. But what I want to say is, this is some bullshit, because at the end of the day, JB and JT literally were 2 games away from the NBA championship. To be inferring anything about them now, I mean, I get it from a net standpoint. This was very much posturing. You know, they were probably the ones that leaked it out. They're trying to drive up the price for Durant, and they're also feeling a sense of urgency. We're not too far away from training camp. You know, if Durant doesn't want to be there, is he going to refuse to play, or is he going to turn up out of shape? Like, they're trying to avoid this James Harden in Houston / James Harden in Brooklyn last year. They're trying to avoid that entire scenario. And because the market's not there that they thought it would be, because their asking price is a ridiculous amount, they're having to try and drum up interest and put pressure on teams to be like, yo, this is what Boston offered, you know. And if they come back with that in a few weeks, then we might have to accept. Do you know what I mean? Now, other teams are like, okay, so now we know the baseline. So Phoenix can go and try and put a deal together, or Atlanta or Chicago, or, you know, Toronto, I think, have got one of the better packages built around Scotty Barnes. Those teams are going to feel a bit more urgency. So it's not necessarily disrespect coming from the Celtics side. But the fact of the matter remains that JB's name's hit the media again, in trade discussions for a start again. And that's not going to do well, because if I was JB, I'd be like, why is it always me? You know what I mean? And I've seen some people be like, yo, this is a compliment to JB because his name's always been thrown in these trades. Like, someone said to me on Instagram, and my snapback was a little bit hard, but somebody was like, oh, so it's an insult that he's always been thrown in trade packages for superstars when it's clear the superstar's better. I'm like, yo, so your girl's DMs are full of guys that are better than you. Is it an insult if she leaves you for him? Because at the end of the day, bro, what we're talking about right now is loyalty. You're on mute.
Dang it. I was gonna say that's a harsh snapback, man. Jeez.
But it's true, right?
To a degree, yeah. It's just going in on him.
No, I mean, I didn't mean it that way, but it was just the first analogy that come to my head. If your girl's DMs are full of guys that she considers better than you, is it okay if she trades you in for them? Because I know it's a different scenario, but the narrative remains the same. It's an upgrade. Nah, it's not okay. We're talking about loyalty. Like, you're going to be pissed. You know what I mean? You see a guy like some next guy's driving a Ferrari, you're driving around in your Nissan, and then you're wondering what. Like, it's the same thing. It's the same principle of loyalty. And to me, that's why JB will feel some type of way.
Yeah, and I think he also has to understand it's a business, but at the same time, if it is constantly your name getting thrown out in trade discussions, I mean, it means that you're coveted. Like, other teams, the first thing that they're going to want to do, because they know it's tricky, right? Because they know they're not going to get their hands on Tatum. Like, there's just no way that Jayson Tatum's going to get traded. However, if you're trying to get something of value and you're talking about trading for an NBA superstar like Kawhi Leonard, like Anthony Davis, you know, Jaylen Brown is the second best player on this team. Not by much, but he is the second best player on this team. He's a little bit under Tatum. I think that's a fair analysis. I think that's what most people will say. He doesn't have that same kind of performance that Jayson Tatum does sometimes, but he's still an amazing player and has had some insane performances. But he's going to always be a trade chip when it comes down to it, like in terms of trading for an NBA superstar like Kevin Durant. Like, I get, yeah, it's a compliment, but it would peeve me too. Like, I'd be pissed if my name constantly came up and like, hey, here's this guy who's like a little bit better than you. We're probably going to, we're thinking about trading for him. It might cost you, but, that's the business. Like, you understand that. It makes it okay, but it really doesn't make it okay.
I bought a JB jersey 2 weeks ago, a new one.
I'm sorry,
I've
man.
convinced myself that it's already vintage. I'm putting it in a shadow box. It'll be up on my wall in a week or so once I get the shadow box here, because I'm not going to bother wearing it because now it's vintage. And whether he's here now,
very sad.
Whether he's here for the next year or two or not, there we go. I think that, the more we read and the more we hear, this partnership, I'm not sure it lasts once that new contract extension comes around. And we can go into the details of that in a different episode, because there's a lot to unpack with the way JT's contract situation is currently situated. He can't earn a max deal on an extension, and we can go into all of that. We could probably bring Keith Smith in for that, because I think there's a lot to discuss there. So for now, I don't care what you read or what you see. You've watched the video. Make your own opinions on what Jayson Tatum said, and more importantly, what he didn't say. But I don't think this narrative's going away anytime soon.
No.
It sucks.
I blame the Nets.
Yeah, I blame
It does suck.
You know what? It's Kyrie's fault. It's that, like, we're all on the back of the giant turtle crawling through space. That's what it is. Right. For everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again tomorrow. And we will be back because I already know what we want to speak about. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and comment. So hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Tim, any departing shots you'd like to make?
No.
All right then, deuces.
Cheers.